Welcome back to Tactics Talk with Guido. Thanks for tuning in. On this episode, I've got a replay analysis for Non-Plus in his KV-2 Tier 6 Russian heavy tank with the derp, the mighty KV-2. Non-Plus sent me a message, said, hey, I need some help. I'm struggling a little bit with this KV line. I did okay in the ones before. I kind of liked the KV-1 and things were going okay. But now I'm playing the KV-2. So he's a really new player. I want to say he's around 2,000 battles. And he's trying to figure out the KV-2, so fair enough. KV-2, well, it's an interesting tank. And I'm going to say that it doesn't play a whole lot like any of the other tanks in its series. There are some tanks that have derps down below it, but it's just really not the same. This is a big, slow tank with a massive derp gun on it. It wants to get close to its work. The good news about it is it can be quite effective even in a Tier 8 battle. In fact, Tier 8s don't really bother it too much. What does bother it is being out of position and getting out in the open and being shot from multiple directions. Because it's not going to bounce a whole bunch. The armor's okay, but it's not great. But it really just can't get out of its own way. So a KV-2 wants to be close to its work and in a place where it can defend itself and isolate the threat. Isolate the threat. That applies to all tanks. That applies to all tanks. So we are here on Siegfried Line, and we are on an assault, and we've got a KV-2 out in the middle of a field. So that is the natural enemy of a KV-2, a large open field. And what that KV-2 wants to do, and in this case Non-Plus, what you should want to do, is not be in that field anymore. So for the watchers at home, the audience at home, take a look at this. You've got guys up in the north. You have spawned in the south in your KV-2. Where do you go? I'm going to give you 6 seconds to talk about it as we time out. Talk amongst yourselves. To think about it and then say, self, where would I go? So first things first, looks okay. We're sort of headed in the direction I would go. And now we're looking over here. And because I have to ask why. So Non-Plus, this is low-hanging fruit, all right? So he asked me, he's a new player, he wants to know how to get better. So I'm going to give you some meta suggestions here on how to get better that don't have a whole lot to do with the KV-2, but have a whole lot to do with everything, to include the KV-2. So not necessarily specific to the KV-2, but this game is about positioning. It's also about threat awareness and knowing where the threat's going to come from. So what you want to do with this KV-2, and what most of the people listening have probably come up with, is get into the town or near to the town so that you can isolate the threat and you're not being shot from so many directions. There are two arty as well. That's another thing that it's very bad to get caught out in a KV-2 with on the board is arty. Additionally, what you want to do is understand the map and where the threat's going to come from. I can almost guarantee you that nobody's going to show up down here in the middle where you're pointing. Unless they zip straight through and go down the road. I'm not saying it's unheard of. People have YOLO'd that way to die, or they think they're spotting. I don't know what, but it is highly unlikely that's the first place you're going to see anyone. Where is the first place you're probably going to see somebody? In front of you, right here. In front of you. So your turret should be either looking over here towards the city or looking up here on this ridge in front of you. In addition, you're going to head over to this way. Now let's talk positioning. You're heading over here and you're sort of looking for targets and you're really just going to count on somebody being dumb. Good news is somebody was dumb. This guy tried to get into a bush, got spotted, clearly doesn't have 6th sense, and he's just sitting there. So you're going to zoom in here and take a shot on him. For the viewers at home, Non-Plus sent a message. I've got several more of his to look at. But for this one, he said, you know, hey, I got a good snipe early on and then things just really went downhill. Well, I would contend that from your positioning decision, things are going to go downhill. To include this snipe. So yes, you got some damage on this guy, but you are nowhere near where you need to be. See where that 150 is there on the map, or maybe even the T-37? You need to be headed down that way to this area right here. See this ramp next to this wall, which protects you from shots on the side, isolates really the threat potentially, looking down at the minimap, guys coming up here can shoot down on you, but it's not that easy. And then allows you to move up and take shots at anyone in close to you. The other thing about this tank that I haven't discussed yet at length is the gun. The derp gun wants to be close. It's not a great sniper gun. It can do that if it needs to. This is not a particularly long shot right here. but it does a lot better nice and close where you can poke and boom. So you drop a shot on that guy, and that was fine and everything, but you are out of position. At this point, you could be getting very close to getting into town or into that little edge spot. So we're going to come up here, kind of take a little peek at a 37. He runs off, and now we're just sort of looking around. This is pretty typical of a new player right here. So I'm not going to hold any punches back here. We're going to discuss how this thing was played. Pretty typical of a new player to cautiously move forward and look for targets and hope that somebody else lights them up for you. But you are just really hanging it out in the middle right here. In fact, you're very lucky that they didn't send anybody over to this area quickly, because there's a couple spots here where they can poke out from the city and just wreck people up on this little ridge like you were on. The enemy team is losing a little bit. Now, you've got a juicy target there potentially, the 01, but we're going to shoot right over top, and there's a good example of why the KV-2 Derp is not the best sniper gun. Would have been fun to have hit. And now I ask you, so what were you waiting for right there? Probably your reload, right? Thinking, well, I need to reload. I'm looking around for a target. Well, why not move forward with the 150, get down low, isolate the threat a little bit to you while you're reloading, and then look for the shot. So continuing on up here, we're going to get, again, kind of out in the open. At least we have protected ourselves from somebody right in front of us there. We've got this hill to work with, but there's a 1375 behind me. Now your T-37 is going to roll in, and he actually gets killed. And then just a lack of awareness on this guy who's shooting you. Don't even really look to be looking at him. And I have to ask you why exactly you were exposing yourself to begin with right there. So no reason to go up and over at almost the highest spot on that ridge. If you wanted to go over there, head down this way in this low spot. That's what this is provided for, game balance wise, so that you can actually approach up into this ramp where your T-50 is currently, and then go hold down on this ramp and start working on these guys. So you should already be over here with these two T-150s. With two T-150s and you with the Derp, this HT number 6 and Thunderbolt and 01, they go down really fast. The bummer is that this 1375 on your side has now won. So now you're in a sandwich. Whack, there's the 01. And like you said it turned into a disaster, and absolutely just completely caused by poor positioning to begin with. And we're going to die here to the 1375. He's going to smack us in the back. Peek around here, maybe I can get a shot. Yes, no, maybe so, and there we go. 1375 ends up killing us. So only one kind of sniper shot at the beginning, which frankly you were out of position to take that shot to begin with. You may have actually got it as you were driving down towards that ramp like I talked about. It's hard to see because of the explosion, but see this flat area where the tank traps are broken down? That's where you want to cross. Take a hard left to go along this road right here, and then head up that ramp and get to where the T-150s are. So again, this one's a pretty low-hanging fruit kind of video. It's more about, on this one, positioning than it is about anything else that you did on this. So once you start working on that positioning and getting your tanks in where they need to be, then you can start doing some of the fine motor skills and fine-tuning kind of stuff in the game. But you have to be very careful, and especially now let's talk about the KV-2 the KV-2 specifically. You have to be very careful about getting yourself into crossfires and exposed positions with slow tanks and very long reloads, because light and smaller tanks, mediums and such, will just pick you apart, not to mention the artillery hammering on you. So yet again, this ramp right here, if from this spawn with a KV-2, you've got to get to this ramp as soon as possible. Anything else out here is just basically wrong. It is not always on all maps where I would say 100% you have to go someplace, but in this case it is almost 100%. You've got to get that KV-2 out from being exposed. All right, man, I'll take a look at a couple of the rest of yours. I hope for everybody else that you learned something, you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, make sure you subscribe, and as always, we will see you.